lost in the noise, seeking the light. Echoes of ages, shining so bright. Welcome to ancient wisdom, stories anew. Wisdom for me and wisdom for you.
The Boy, the Well, and the Elder's Riddle, a parable of unknowing strength. In a small village, nestled among the terraced hills of Judea, lived two young boys who were the closest of companions, their days intertwined like threads in a single tapestry. Avi, a spirited lad of 6 summers, and Boaz, stronger and older at 10, played together, shared their barley cakes, and indeed approached every adventure as an inseparable team. One sun-baked afternoon, their playful chase led them beyond the familiar olive groves surrounding the village, further than they usually ventured. "You can't catch me, Avi," Boaz teased, his laughter echoing as he darted ahead towards a cluster of old carob trees. "Oh, yes, I can," Avi shouted back, his small legs pumping furiously, a joyful grin on his face. As Boaz ran, his eyes on his younger friend behind him, he failed to notice an old, deep well, its stone rim partly hidden by overgrown shrubs. Before he could halt his momentum, his foot slipped on the loose earth, and with a startled cry, he tumbled straight into the dark opening, landing with a splash in the cold water far below. "Help! Avi, help!" he screamed, his voice tight with terror, as he thrashed in the water. "I cannot find the bottom." Avi, reaching the well's edge, froze, his playful laughter dying in his throat. His best friend was struggling, gasping for air, his eyes wide with a desperate fear that clutched at Avi's own heart. He looked around wildly, but the village was a distant shimmer of white stone. No one was near enough to summon for help. Then his frantic gaze fell upon an old wooden bucket lying near the well, a frayed but sturdy rope tied to its handle. Without a second thought, driven by a love that knew no calculation of his own strength, Avi grabbed the rope and hurled the bucket down into the darkness. "Boaz, hold on to it!" he yelled, his voice small but clear. Boaz, sputtering, managed to grasp the bucket. Now came the true test. 6-year-old Avi, setting his small jaw with determination, began to pull. His tiny hands strained against the coarse rope. His arms burned with a fire he'd never known, but he refused to yield. He pulled and pulled again, his little feet digging into the dusty ground for purchase, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "I will not let go, I will not let go," he chanted under his breath, a prayer of pure will. The rope bit into his palms, sweat stung his eyes, his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, but he did not stop. With one last mighty heave that seemed to draw strength from the very stones of the earth, he dragged his older, heavier friend over the rim of the well. Both boys collapsed onto the ground, panting, trembling, soaked, Boaz with well water, Avi with sweat and tears. For a moment, they just lay there, gasping. Then they looked at each other, and a shared sob of relief and disbelief burst from them. They scrambled into a tight hug, clinging to each other. You saved me, Avi," Boaz whispered, his voice still shaky. Avi, wiping his tears with a muddy hand, managed a wobbly grin. "Of course I did. Who else would chase me to the carob trees if you were gone?" They sat there, the fear slowly giving way to a dazed relief, until a new, more worldly anxiety struck them. "Oh no," Boaz groaned. "What if our parents find out how far we wandered? We're going to get such a scolding." Though hesitant, they knew they had to share what had happened. They trudged back to the village and, with a mixture of lingering fear and newfound pride, recounted their adventure to their families and gathered villagers. But instead of praise or even concerned inquiry, their tale was met with open laughter and head shaking. "What stories you boys weave," one villager chuckled. "A 6-year-old pulling a 10-year-old from the depths of the old well? Impossible! Little Avi can barely lift a full water skin by himself." Others murmured their agreement, amused by what they considered a child's fanciful tale. The boy's heart sank. No one believed them. Their courage, their desperate struggle, was dismissed as make-believe. Then a respected voice cut through the skeptical murmurs. Zaken Reuven, the oldest and wisest elder in the village, stepped forward. He had listened to the boy's earnest account with a thoughtful expression, his eyes missing nothing. He smiled gently. "The question is not how little Avi performed this mighty deed," Zaken Reuven said, his voice quieting the crowd. "The true question we should ask is, why was he able to do it?" Everyone fell silent, pondering his words. He continued, his gaze sweeping over the villagers and resting kindly on Avi. At that moment, by the well, there was no one around to tell young Avi that he couldn't do it. No one was there to say, "You are too small." No one was there to remind him, "You are not strong enough." Not even a whisper of doubt from within his own heart, for his only thought was for his friend. The villagers looked at Avi with new eyes, the truth of the elder's words dawning upon them. The boy, in his innocent courage and singular focus on saving Boaz, had no concept of his own supposed limitations. And so he simply did what needed to be done. The moral of this story, often retold by Zaken Reuven in later years, was this: the only true limits we possess are often the ones we accept from others or whisper to ourselves. When faith is pure and purpose is clear and no voice of doubt finds purchase in the heart, ordinary beings can find within themselves an extraordinary strength, a strength perhaps quietly bestowed by the Almighty for just such a moment. Believe in the good you can do, especially when no one is there to tell you it's impossible.